What is Crohn's disease? What are the symptoms? How do they diagnose it? That's what we're going to go over in this video in very simple, easy to understand terms. Anybody can understand this, and I have lots of good visuals to show you. My name's Mike, the Heal Your Gut Guy. I used to have horrible Crohn's, but until I addressed the root cause, I was able to get better, and now I don't have any symptoms. And I've helped many other people do this. There's new science available to us that your GI doctor hasn't gotten caught up to date with, and I'm going to share it with you in this video. But I help people get better with my 13-day protocol, just like this person did. How many times were you going to the bathroom?
2-3 times, but it was diarrhea. My main issue was pain, horrible pain. After a week, my symptoms gone completely.
So what is Crohn's disease? We have to understand what it is if we want to know if we have it or not and how to fix it. So if you read WebMD or the Mayo Clinic, they're going to have slightly different definitions. It's inflammation anywhere from mouth to butthole. But if I get mad at my GI doctor because he won't answer my questions correctly and I kick him in the butt and then I punch him in the mouth, so his mouth and butt are both inflamed, yet he wouldn't get diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So we first need to understand what inflammation is. If I hit myself, then the arm will become inflamed to heal that injury. Now, if my gut is inflamed, it means it's healing injury. Why would I want to suppress that inflammation? Because that's like the main treatment available. They give you drugs that suppress the inflammation. A better question to ask is, what is causing the injury in my gut so it doesn't have to become inflamed in the first place? That's we need to use logic. We need to use our head here. So now that we know what inflammation is, so it's inflammation that won't stop anywhere from mouth to butthole. That's the current definition. But Crohn's disease was discovered by a doctor in the 1930s. His name was Dr. Burrell Crohn. And he did not want to call it Crohn's disease because he knew it would confuse everybody, and that's what it's doing today. If I say Crohn's disease, you don't know if the inflammation, if I'm referring to somebody with inflammation in their small intestine or large intestine or in their mouth, like what does it mean? What do you mean? Now, today, most people get the Crohn's diagnosis when they discover inflammation in the last part of the small intestine, this red region. It's called the ileum, the small intestine. So imagine your stomach's here. Then it goes into the small intestine, and the small intestine is much longer than what I have drawn. But the first part it's called the duodenum, which is a very tiny part, only about 12 inches long, connected to your stomach. And then it goes into the duodenum, and then it goes into the ileum. And I believe it's like 10 each, like this is like 20 feet long altogether. And so here he wanted to call it regional ileitis. He begged the GI community. He was like a rock star in the GI community for some reason, and he begged the GI community not to call it Crohn's disease. They almost called colitis Crohn's disease of the colon. He wanted to call it regional ileitis, which means he found patches of inflammation in the ileum. You know, if someone has colitis, they have inflammation in the colon. So why can't I use the term Crohn's? If someone has colitis, why can't I just use the word Crohn's? Like just that, there's no logic going on in the GI community right now. None whatsoever. They don't know what inflammation is. They don't even know what their own stupid terms mean. So when I say the word Crohn's, what I really want to communicate is regional ileitis, because when people discover inflammation in the last part of the small intestine, that is usually, it depends on what your GI doctor is, what side of the bed he woke up on that day. Usually somebody gets diagnosed with Crohn's when they discover inflammation here. Now, how do they do that? So usually the first test they run, so you have digestive issues, you have digestive symptoms. We're going to go over these in a little bit. So you start having symptoms and your gut starts to hurt, and they go, okay, we're going to do a blood test to check your inflammation levels. If your inflammation levels are high and you're still having symptoms, then what they're going to do is they're going to do a colonoscopy, and they're going to check your colon first. And this camera, it depends on what's going on down here, but usually they can only get the camera to about here. And then it gets a little too tight in there and they can't see much. For me, I was so inflamed right here that they couldn't get the camera in here. So they could do it that way. They could do it with an MRI, or they could do it with a capsule endoscopy. And a capsule endoscopy is like my favorite way because you swallow this capsule, you get to see what's going on in the stomach, this part of the small intestine, that part of the small intestine, and then the colon. And it takes pictures the whole way down. So a capsule endoscopy is a good way. Now, maybe you're not, because this could take months to do all these tests, depending on what your healthcare plan is and, what's going on. So there are a lot of symptoms that get labeled as Crohn's symptoms, but they're not Crohn's symptoms at all. They're not symptoms produced by the last part of the small intestine. So let's go through these list of symptoms one by one, and let me help you kind of understand what's going on in the body. So first off, let's get rid of some very basic ones. So one thing that I hear is like sensitivity to light. The eyeballs and the intestines are not connected at all. Wrong. No, we just spent too much time in our parents' basement playing World of Warcraft. Like when your eyes don't get exposure to light, they're just sensitive to light. That's just how it is. Skin issues. No, you might look not as healthy looking, but the skin and the gut are totally separate organs. Mouth ulcers. The mouth and this part of the small intestine are totally separate organs. They are not related. We also have, all right, let's go to perianal fistulas. So I actually had a perianal fistula. Boom, right here. Really gross. I have a video somewhere else on what I did to fix that. But again, it's connected to the intestines, but again, it's connected to the colon and not the small intestine. So they're two separate tissues. This is the perianal duct, and this is the intestines. No, they're two separate conditions. We have hemorrhoids and fissures, which also exist down here. Are they connected to the small intestine? No, then it's not part of Crohn's disease. It is a separate condition. Now, so I mentioned a little while back, what's causing the injury in the small intestine, okay? And who discovered this is a brilliant doctor. His name was Dr. Hammer. He could look at your brain CT scan and know if you had Crohn's or colitis, or any disease, in fact. And so what he discovered is when somebody had Crohn's disease, he could see this ring in their brain in a very specific location in the brainstem, and you could see it in mine. I'll mark it at 9. I'll show it. So, and the conflict is, what is something important to my survival that I cannot digest, I cannot absorb, and I'm angry and I'm frustrated about it? It could be I can't digest that cute girl in class and I'm angry about it. Oh, what, you digest women, you eat women? That's really weird. Think about it this way. I've seen some people go, that person's so and so, they're so pretty. Oh, they look so tasty. Our language is very figurative, and our subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between our words and like imaginary and reality a lot of the times. And so when we suffer a stressful event, that tasty person gets taken away from us and we can't digest and absorb them anymore. It puts an organ into overdrive to help us overcome that conflict. I couldn't digest video games. I couldn't digest women. I couldn't. Money is a very popular one as well. And so it will either develop flat growths, right, to help absorb that thing important to our survival, or it will develop a cauliflower growth. And Dr. Hammer tested these cauliflower growths. They'll show up as polyps, but they secreted digestive juices that digest food 10 times faster. So let's say this girl gets taken away from us and we're all bent out of shape and we're crying and I can't digest her, wah, wah, wah. Then somehow I resolve that conflict by getting another girlfriend or something like that. Now the body doesn't need these high maintenance cells and it starts to get rid of them. So in the conflict active phase, you don't have any symptoms. But when the conflict gets resolved, and what I'm referring to is his work, it was called GNM, Dr. Hammer. When these extra cells are growing, we don't have any really physical symptoms on the gut level, on the organ level. But when it gets resolved, the body starts to remove these extra gut cells. And guess what? That hurts. So pain, gut pain. That's where the pain comes in. And the body is using a lot of energy here, and that's when the fatigue kicks in. And also, remember I said there was that ring in the brain? The brain was in overdrive, putting this organ into overdrive. The brain was working overtime as well. The brain has to heal as well, and that causes fevers and headaches. And blood and mucus is involved in removing these extra gut cells, and that's why you might see blood and mucus in your stool. But usually when you're seeing a lot of blood and mucus in your stool, that's usually it's usually part of the colon, because it kind of gets like reabsorbed and hides in the stool when it happens in the small intestine. So usually if you see a lot of blood and mucus, that might be a sign that you have more things going on in the colon than you do in the small intestine. And you could have both going on. I had both going on. When they did my test, they found, stuff going on in my colon and in my small intestine. Another symptom is bone and joint pain that gets clumped in with Crohn's. Bones and joints are not connected to the small intestine last I checked. This is a totally separate condition caused by a totally different conflict. Weight loss. So I'm going to get to these other ones, but weight loss happens when so let's say I get back together with that girlfriend, but then it's off and on, off and on, off and on, off and on. And then I become very jaded and all my relationships are awful after that because I'm scarred and I'm traumatized. Then my gut is constantly going in and out of overdrive, in and out of overdrive, in and out of overdrive, and I'm not digesting my food, I'm not absorbing my calories, and I start to lose weight. Now, let's explain diarrhea and constipation really quick, and I can do that better with this. Now, what I'm showing you here are the intestines, right? And now they're lined with the intestinal muscles. They're muscles that run side to side and up and down. So like when someone is getting triggered with diarrhea, there's either crap or toxins in somebody's intestines that physically need to be moved out, like dead